3 star systems went silent. Entire populations vanished without a trace. The Galactic Council's finest ships couldn't touch the enemy that erased biology itself. Their last hope? A quarantined Deathworld species they once called savages. The Galactic Council's deep space relays detected the silence first. 3 systems in the outer rim went dark without warning. There were no debris fields, no emergency signals, and no trace of the billions who once lived there. Colony ship Meridian broke the pattern with its final transmission. They took everyone. The message crackled across the comms before cutting to static. This fragment became the only evidence of what was happening. The Vidian crystal cities stood pristine but empty. Their crystalline structures still caught the light, but no movement disturbed the perfect silence. The Anthali gas colonies showed the same absence, their floating habitats drifting without life. Scans revealed the complete removal of biological matter. No bodies, no organic residue, no signs of conventional destruction. The harvesting technology left infrastructure intact while erasing all living things. The Dulmar waterworlds told the same story. Their underwater cities remained structurally sound, but every living organism had vanished. The oceans moved through empty habitats as if nothing had changed. Green beams swept across population centers with methodical efficiency. Witness accounts described these beams scanning every surface, removing biological material without damaging buildings or technology. The process took hours, not days. The Harmony's Edge received orders to investigate. This advanced council ship set course for the outer rim, its sensors calibrated to detect any energy signature. The crew prepared for standard first contact procedures. Their initial scans found nothing unusual until they reached the 3rd system. A massive scar marked the planetary surface where something heavy had landed. The soil had fused into glass and an unknown energy signature lingered in the atmosphere. Every investigation yielded the same results. No wreckage, no resistance, no survivors. Entire civilizations had been erased as efficiently as harvesting crops. The scale suggested systematic annihilation rather than conquest. The council analysts determined this was not warfare in any conventional sense. There were no territorial claims, no demands, no communication. The pattern indicated resource collection on a planetary scale. This silent harvesting continued unchallenged. Conventional military response protocols proved useless against an enemy that left no targets. The Council's defense networks had no precedent for this threat. Navigation charts showed the disappearances moving inward from the rim. Each vanished system brought the unknown threat closer to populated core worlds. The pattern suggested methodical progress rather than random strikes. Defense planners struggled to develop countermeasures. How do you fight something that leaves no trace of its presence? How do you protect against technology that ignores shields and conventional defenses? The silence spread like a cosmic plague, consuming systems with clinical precision. Each new absence deepened the mystery and heightened the urgency. The Council faced an enemy that operated beyond their understanding of physics or warfare. This was systematic annihilation on a scale never before recorded. The galaxy had encountered predators and conquerors, but never something that treated entire civilizations as harvestable resources. The implications redefined their concept of existential threats. The Harmony's Edge drifted toward the outer rim, its powerful sensors sweeping the void where 3 systems had fallen silent. Their bridge crew saw it first through long-range optical arrays, a vessel that dwarfed their command ship 10 times over. Its hull was a matte, non-reflective black carved with symbols that resembled energy diagrams more than written language. Visual contact triggered automated defense protocols. Shields powered to maximum output, layering the ship in overlapping protection fields. Weapon systems cycled to full combat readiness, standard procedure for unidentified contacts. The black ship ignored the defensive preparations, continuing its slow arc toward the dead planet below. A weapon discharge from the alien vessel required no charging cycle or visible firing mechanism. A green beam lanced out from the black hull. It passed through the Harmony's Edge's layered shield bubbles without triggering energy dissipation signatures. The shields registered no impact, no energy transfer, no contact at all. The beam struck the starboard hull. External cameras showed a perfect circular section of armored plating vanish. There was no explosion, no melting, no debris. The metal simply ceased to exist, leaving an open wound in the ship's structure. Atmosphere vented into the vacuum, carrying with it diagnostic probes that disappeared into the void where the hull had been. Sensor logs showed impossible readings. The physics of material existence appeared to rewrite itself within the beam's area of effect. Molecular bonds didn't break. They stopped having ever existed. The ship's computers could not classify the energy signature or the mechanism of destruction. Reality itself was being edited rather than damaged. Conventional weapons proved completely ineffective. The Harmony's Edge fired its main cannon, a weapon designed to crack small moons. The coherent energy burst passed through the alien vessel's position without impact. Scanners showed the beam continuing into space beyond, unchanged but having encountered nothing to resist its passage. The tactical officer recommended immediate withdrawal. Defense systems designed against known threats could not counter technology that bypassed physical laws. The black ship made no attempt to pursue, continuing its harvesting operations on the planet below. Its indifference to the Council vessel demonstrated complete confidence in its superiority. This encounter revealed more than a military defeat. It demonstrated a fundamental gap in understanding between galactic technology and the Devourer's capabilities. The Council's entire defensive doctrine assumed enemies followed known physical laws. This enemy rewrote those laws at will. The Harmony's Edge escaped with critical damage and sensor data that defied analysis. Their report described not just a powerful enemy, but one that operated on principles beyond galactic science: shields, armor, and energy weapons. The foundation of space warfare proved irrelevant against an opponent that could delete sections of reality. The Council now understood they faced not just an invasion, but a confrontation with something that treated their technology as primitive toys. Advanced systems designed over centuries of research had failed against weapons that ignored the rules of engagement. This was not a battle that could be won through conventional means. Their enemy harvested entire worlds with technology that surpassed their understanding of physics itself. The Council's greatest ships and weapons had been rendered obsolete in a single engagement. The scale of the threat now demanded solutions outside their established military doctrines. 12,000 black ships appeared at the edge of the Kepler system, maintaining perfect formation without visible propulsion. Their arrival showed no energy signature, no communication, no warning. Kepler Prime represented the Council's strongest defensive position, with planetary shields that could withstand bombardment from entire fleets and orbital platforms designed to destroy capital ships at extreme range. The fortress world's defense grid activated immediately. Energy cannons fired volleys that could crack small moons. Missile batteries launched projectiles carrying antimatter warheads. Shield generators created overlapping defensive barriers around the planet and its orbital installations. The Devourer fleet ignored these preparations, continuing its approach without altering course. A telepathic message reached every mind on Kepler Prime simultaneously. It carried no emotion, no tone, only pure information. "We have consumed 1,000 galaxies." The statement carried the weight of absolute certainty, the cold fact of countless civilizations erased. This was not a threat but a statement of process. Centuries of defensive preparation proved completely ineffective. Energy weapons discharged against the black ships showed no impact. Sensors detected the beams passing through the enemy vessels as if they weren't there. Antimatter warheads detonated without damaging the black hulls, their explosions contained within spheres of altered physics. The green beams activated simultaneously across the planetary surface. They swept across cities in methodical patterns, converting biological matter into energy that streamed upward to the waiting ships. The process showed no preference for species, age, or location. Everything living was harvested with identical efficiency. Planetary defenses continued firing throughout the harvesting. The orbital platforms unleashed their full arsenals, targeting different sections of the Devourer fleet. The results remained the same. Weapons fire either passed through the ships or ceased to exist upon contact. Shield systems designed to repel energy attacks had no effect on beams that manipulated reality itself. Kepler Prime's atmosphere began thinning as the harvesting continued. The green beams stripped the planet of all biological material, including microbial life in the soil and oceans. Within hours, the world became a barren rock, its cities standing empty and its ecosystems completely erased. The process took less than 4 hours to consume 12 billion lives. The defending fleet suffered catastrophic losses. Only 17 of 300 vessels remained operational after engaging the Devourers. Their weapons had no effect. Their shields provided no protection and their speed offered no advantage. Captain Nera's final report confirmed the enemy's reality manipulation capabilities and recommended immediate evacuation from the galaxy. This demonstration shattered the Council's military confidence. Their strongest fortress world had fallen without damaging a single enemy ship. Conventional warfare had reached its absolute limit against an enemy that operated outside known physical laws. The scale of defeat forced consideration of previously unthinkable solutions. The Devourers continued their advance toward the core worlds after consuming Kepler Prime. Their movement pattern showed no urgency, only methodical progression toward the next harvesting target. This patience demonstrated complete confidence in their technological superiority and the inevitability of their victory. The Council now faced an enemy that treated their greatest defenses as irrelevant obstacles. Military doctrine based on shield technology and energy weapons had proven useless. Strategic planning based on territorial defense and fleet engagements had no application. The rules of warfare had been rewritten by an enemy that didn't recognize them. This catastrophic defeat created desperation that overrode centuries of political and military tradition. Solutions previously considered too dangerous, too radical, or too unethical now demanded serious consideration. The Council began examining options they would have rejected under any other circumstances. The survival of galactic civilization now depended on finding capabilities that could counter reality manipulation. This required looking beyond conventional military thinking and establish technological boundaries. The search began for something that could fight an enemy that ignored the rules of physics. The Council chamber echoed with debates that circled the same impossible problem. Half the galaxy stood already consumed, their finest defenses having proven completely useless. Representatives from 100 species faced the mathematical certainty of extinction within months. Their emergency session revealed no viable strategies, only the repeated confirmation of technological inferiority. Admiral Nera's battlefield report left no room for optimism. The Devourers' technology operated under different physical laws, making conventional weapons cease to exist upon contact. This wasn't a gap in firepower, but a fundamental mismatch in scientific understanding. The Council's entire military doctrine had become irrelevant against enemies who could rewrite reality. The political stalemate reflected deep divisions in approach. Some factions advocated for last resort weapons like reality bombs and quantum disruptors. Others proposed mass evacuation despite the logistical impossibility. The debate continued as refugee ships crowded the remaining ports, their presence underscoring the scale of the crisis. Ambassador Caney broke the deadlock with his controversial proposal. He suggested contacting the quarantined Deathworld of Earth, a solution that triggered immediate outrage. The Vidian representative's harmonic shriek nearly shattered the chamber windows. Several delegates walked out in protest, their departure highlighting centuries of ingrained prejudice against humanity. Humanity's history with the Council explained the resistance. During first contact centuries earlier, humans had immediately requested weapons technology and military tactics. When refused, they reverse-engineered Council technology and began building warships. This led to their quarantine, with official policy stating contact would only resume when humanity evolved beyond its violent nature. Intelligence reports showed increased activity in the human system. Unknown ship configurations with heavy armor and primitive weapons were under construction. Their aggressive design signaled military readiness despite the quarantine. This development forced the Council to choose between certain extinction and an alliance with a species they feared. The vote reflected the gravity of the situation. The final count stood at 847 in favor, 823 against, with 45 abstentions. This narrow margin demonstrated how desperation had overcome centuries of established policy. Survival now outweighed traditional diplomatic precautions and ethical considerations. Ambassador Caney volunteered for the mission to Earth. His diplomatic vessel received clearance to pass through the automated defense platforms monitoring the quarantine system. The Council's strict containment protocols designed to isolate dangerous species were now being broken for the first time in galactic history. This decision represented a fundamental shift in strategic thinking. The Council was abandoning its established norms in favor of potential salvation. They were embracing what they had once feared, betting their survival on a species known for violence and unpredictable behavior. The rules of engagement were about to change completely. The approach to Earth would test whether humanity's notorious adaptability could counter technology that defied physics. Their reputation for ruthless problem-solving might now become the galaxy's greatest asset. The Council had placed its final hope in the very qualities that had originally justified humanity's isolation. This alliance would require accepting tactics that violated centuries of civilized warfare doctrine. The Council members understood they were potentially exchanging one existential threat for another. But with the Devourers consuming systems methodically, the risk calculation had shifted irrevocably. Ambassador Caney stood before the Galactic Council's emergency session, his presentation already causing visible discomfort among the delegates. He displayed schematics of Earth's military vessels, their designs showing heavy armor and aggressive weapon placements. These were not elegant Council warships but functional tools for survival, built by a species that had faced extinction-level threats throughout its evolution. The Council chamber showed mixed reactions to the proposal. Several delegates walked out in protest, their departure a silent condemnation of the idea. Others remained but expressed open skepticism about allying with a species they had quarantined for centuries. The Vidian representative's crystalline structure vibrated with visible distress at the suggestion. First contact memories remained fresh in the Council's collective consciousness. Humanity had immediately requested weapons technology upon meeting other spacefaring species. When refused, they reverse-engineered Council technology within months. This demonstrated both remarkable adaptability and a concerning focus on military applications. Human problem-solving differed fundamentally from galactic norms. Where Council species developed technological solutions and diplomatic approaches, humans defaulted to direct confrontation. Their history showed consistent use of violence to resolve conflicts, a trait that had justified their quarantine under galactic law. Earth's classification as a death world explained much of humanity's development. Constant environmental threats forced cooperative survival mechanisms, but also ingrained violence as a primary tool. Predators, natural disasters, and resource scarcity shaped a species that viewed conflict as inevitable, rather than exceptional. Current intelligence showed increased activity in the human system. Unknown ship configurations featured reinforced hulls and kinetic weapon systems. Their design philosophy emphasized durability and firepower over advanced technology. This military buildup occurred despite the quarantine, demonstrating persistent preparation for unknown threats. Captain Rodriguez's statement captured the essential difference in perspective. She had stated during initial contact that humans didn't consider civilian deaths acceptable, but inevitable. This distinction highlighted the pragmatic approach that now offered potential salvation against the Devourers. The Council's technological solutions had failed completely against reality-manipulating weapons. Energy shields and advanced weaponry proved useless against enemies that could rewrite physical laws. Humanity's focus on simple physical force might provide the necessary countermeasure. The vote proceeded under emergency protocols. Delegates weighed centuries of prejudice against certain extinction. The final count showed a narrow margin in favor of the proposal, reflecting deep reservations about the alliance. This decision marked a fundamental shift in galactic policy. Operation parameters were established with strict limitations. Human forces would operate under their own command structure but with Council oversight. The agreement specified engagement protocols and fallback positions, though everyone understood these might prove impractical in actual combat. The Joint Operation Authorization included technology sharing previously prohibited under quarantine rules. Humanity would receive limited access to Council sensors and communication systems. In return, they provided tactical analysis based on their unique combat experience. This alliance represented the Council's complete reversal of centuries of policy. They were now embracing the very qualities that had justified humanity's isolation. The decision reflected the absolute necessity created by the Devourer threat. Unconventional warfare required leadership willing to employ methods the Council considered unacceptable. Humanity's reputation for tactical brutality now became their greatest asset. The galaxy's survival might depend on their willingness to cross ethical boundaries others wouldn't. Contemplate, the stage was set for a confrontation between two Radically different approaches to conflict. The Council's technological sophistication had failed against the Devourer's reality manipulation. Now humanity's primitive but effective methods would have their chance against an enemy that had consumed 1,000 galaxies. Ambassador. Kaney's diplomatic vessel docked with Earth's orbital defense platform under heavy escort. The station's design prioritized function over elegance, with exposed conduits and reinforced bulkheads suggesting a constant expectation of conflict. Human ships nearby displayed aggressive lines and heavy armor plating, their weapon ports positioned for maximum coverage rather than aesthetic harmony. This was not a polished armada, but a predator-like collection of vessels built for survival. Captain Rodriguez greeted the ambassador on the command deck. Her briefing contained no diplomatic language or strategic hesitation. She stated clearly that human forces would not adopt civilized conventions of warfare. Their approach would embrace chaotic aggression and brutal efficiency, prioritizing victory above all other considerations. The explanation carried no apology, only factual delivery of operational parameters. The human military response had been swift and brutally effective from the moment they received the Council's data. Shipyards produced vessels designed specifically to counter the Devourer threat, incorporating lessons from failed engagements. Their designs favored kinetic weapons and reinforced hulls over energy-based systems that had proven useless against reality manipulation. High casualties and civilian suffering were accepted as inevitable costs of engagement. This perspective differed fundamentally from Council doctrine, which prioritized minimizing collateral damage. Human planning assumed significant losses from the outset, with redundancy and attrition calculations built into every tactical decision. The guiding principle driving all deployments was, "We fight to win." This simple directive overrode concerns about protocol, preservation of forces, or ethical limitations. Every ship, every weapon, every tactical decision served this single objective without compromise. Human vessels featured aggressive stances not for intimidation, but for practical combat effectiveness. Weapon placements allowed simultaneous forward firing arcs, and armor concentrated around critical systems rather than evenly distributed. This design philosophy reflected centuries of warfare experience against overwhelming threats. The fleet's composition showed remarkable adaptability. Mining vessels were being converted into weapons platforms, their industrial equipment repurposed for combat roles. Cargo haulers received reinforced bows for ramming maneuvers. This flexibility demonstrated a willingness to use any available resource against the enemy. Captain Rodriguez made no attempt to soften the reality of their methods. She explained that human tactics would include suicide runs, boarding actions, and other approaches the Council considered unacceptable. The priority was effectiveness, not adherence to galactic conventions of honorable combat. This represented a complete paradigm shift from the Council's technological approach, where advanced species sought elegant solutions through physics manipulation. Humans relied on mass, velocity, and explosive force. Their weapons were too simple, too primitive for the Devourer's reality-warping technology to effectively counter. The galaxy's salvation now hinged on these primitive but effective tactics. Human ships moved toward the front lines, their formations resembling hunting packs rather than military fleets. Their operational readiness showed they had been preparing for such a threat long before the Council's arrival. The stage was set for a new kind of space, warfare that valued determination over technology and persistence over precision. This approach would test whether brute force could overcome reality manipulation, where advanced science had failed. The coming engagement would determine whether humanity's violent adaptability could save what remained of galactic civilization. Human and Council ships formed up around Sentry Station, their combined fleet representing the galaxy's last organized defense. The Devourers approached in their methodical formation, black hulls absorbing starlight. Council vessels fired first with energy weapons that had proven useless in previous engagements. The green beams swept through their attacks without resistance, continuing toward the station. Earth's ships moved in 3 separate attack groups. The first wave consisted of reinforced mining vessels converted into ram ships. Their industrial-grade hulls could withstand impacts that would shred military craft. These ships accelerated toward the Devourer formation, ignoring conventional attack patterns. Their approach relied on mass and velocity rather than technological sophistication. The Devourers' reality manipulation systems struggled against simple physics. Kinetic projectiles from railguns struck black hulls with tremendous force. Unlike energy weapons that could be negated, these solid projectiles followed fundamental physical laws that predated the Devourers' technology by billions of years. The impacts created actual damage where energy beams had failed completely. Mining ships transformed into weapons platforms, their industrial equipment repurposed for combat. Cargo haulers carrying explosive payloads executed suicide runs against harvester arrays. These primitive attacks exploited the enemy's unfamiliarity with non-technological warfare. The Devourers had no counter for opponents who used their ships as physical weapons. Nuclear warheads delivered by fighter craft proved particularly effective. The explosions followed chemical and physical principles, too basic for reality manipulation to counter. Radiation and shockwaves damaged systems designed to handle sophisticated energy attacks. The human fleet used weapons that were crude, but operated on fundamental levels the enemy couldn't rewrite. Boarding parties launched toward damaged Devourer vessels using reaction thrusters and magnetic grapples. They carried projectile weapons and chemical explosives that galactic civilizations considered barbaric. These primitive tools bypassed defense systems designed to counter advanced technology. The boarding teams planted shaped charges in power cores, causing explosions that followed simple chemical reactions. Admiral Nera observed the battle from her command ship. She noted that human tactics embraced chaotic aggression where elegant strategies failed. Their approach used kinetic force when energy weapons proved useless and simple explosions when sophisticated systems were negated. This represented a complete departure from established galactic combat doctrine. The battle demonstrated that basic mass and velocity couldn't be negated by reality warping. Physical impacts from ramming ships caused actual structural damage. Kinetic rounds penetrated hulls that had absorbed energy weapons without effect. Nuclear explosions created radiation bursts that damaged systems across multiple vessels. Close-quarters warfare became the new effective doctrine against the Devourers. Boarding actions and physical attacks proved more successful than long-range engagements. The enemy's reality manipulation worked best against technological systems, but struggled with primitive physical force. This weakness would define all future engagements. The human fleet's success came at high cost but delivered measurable results. For the first time, Devourer ships sustained actual damage and some were destroyed completely. This proved the enemy could be fought effectively with the right approach. The victory established a new tactical framework for the conflict. Century Station remained operational, though heavily damaged. The combined fleet had held the line using methods the Council would never have considered. This engagement marked the turning point where primitive but effective tactics began overcoming advanced reality manipulation technology. Human engineers captured damaged Devourer components from the Century engagement. Their analysis revealed a critical vulnerability in the reality manipulation systems. The technology could negate advanced weapons but struggled with overwhelming physical processes. This discovery formed the basis for Operation Feedback. The machines couldn't handle fundamental forces that predated their technology. Chemical explosions and kinetic impacts followed basic physical laws billions of years older than the Devourers' systems. This limitation became the key to countering their most powerful advantage. Simplicity would defeat sophistication. Mining ships detached from asteroid processing duties throughout human space. These industrial vessels received modified guidance systems and additional explosive payloads. Their reinforced hulls could withstand close proximity detonations that would destroy military craft. Engineers calculated optimal approach vectors for maximum impact. Detonating industrial loads near reality generators triggered cascade failures in the Devourer network. The explosions created shockwaves that overloaded delicate manipulation systems. These primitive blasts caused disruptions that sophisticated energy weapons couldn't achieve. The hive mind began experiencing coordination problems. Reality warping weapons started malfunctioning during engagements. Green beams flickered and sometimes negated their own systems instead of enemy targets. This self-inflicted damage spread through connected vessels, creating openings for conventional attacks. The tactical advantage began shifting toward human forces. Chemistry-based explosions strained the machine's coordination beyond their design limits. Simple exothermic reactions proved too basic for their reality manipulation to counter effectively. The Devourer technology could handle complex energy signatures but failed against fundamental combustion processes. This vulnerability spread through their networked systems. Raw physical laws consistently outperformed elegant calculations in these engagements. Kinetic impacts from railguns achieved what phased energy beams could not. Nuclear detonations created radiation patterns that disrupted precision systems. The enemy's technological sophistication became their weakness against primitive force. Mundane processes overwhelmed sophisticated reality generators through sheer simplicity. The Devourer's systems were designed to counter advanced technology, not basic physics. This fundamental mismatch in combat philosophy gave human forces their first real advantage. The enemy couldn't adapt to such primitive warfare methods. The cascade spread through the Devourer fleet like a digital virus. Each successful detonation created more system failures across connected ships. Reality manipulation fields flickered and collapsed under the strain of processing basic physical events. The coordinated harvesting operations began showing significant disruptions. Operation Feedback proved that technological superiority had limits against determined opposition. Human engineers had found the flaw in seemingly invincible technology. Their solution used industrial equipment and basic explosives rather than advanced weaponry. This approach would define the remainder of the conflict. The virus-like spread of system failures continued across the Devourer fleet. Each successful attack created more vulnerabilities in their networked consciousness. The enemy's greatest strength became their critical weakness under the right kind of pressure. This discovery changed the strategic balance completely. Captain Torres launched the attack run with 3 modified mining vessels at the head of the assault. These industrial ships had been stripped of all non-essential equipment and packed with high-yield explosives. Their reinforced hulls could withstand environmental hazards that would destroy military craft. Their approach vector aimed directly at the Devourer command ship's reality generator arrays. The assault divided into 3 distinct attack groups following simple but effective designations. Ram ships formed the first wave, their mass and velocity providing the initial impact. Bombers carried explosive payloads for secondary detonations. Boarding teams designated as aggressive negotiators prepared for close-quarters engagement after the initial breaches. Lieutenant Marcus, Webb's fighter squadron followed the ram ships with nuclear and kinetic weapons. Their fighters carried warheads designed for direct impact rather than long-range deployment. The pilots approached at maximum speed, targeting specific weak points identified from previous engagements. Their mission required precise timing and acceptance of high casualty rates. Admiral Morrison coordinated the multi-fleet assault from his command ship. He directed council vessels to provide covering fire, while human ships executed their attack runs. The coordination emphasized timing over sophistication, with each element performing its designated role without deviation. This simple chain of command proved more effective than complex battle management systems. Thousands of ships participated in the coordinated assault. Human vessels accounted for most of the initial wave, with council ships providing support. The attack accepted significant losses as part of its operational parameters. Destroyed ships created debris fields that masked subsequent approaches, turning losses into tactical advantages. Boarding actions began after the initial impacts. Soldiers in powered armor used reaction thrusters to cross open space to damaged Devourer vessels. Their magnetic grapples attached to alien hulls that showed impact damage from the kinetic strikes. They carried chemical explosives and projectile weapons that galactic civilizations considered primitive, but effective. The Devourer defense systems struggled against these basic attack methods. Their technology could counter energy weapons and sophisticated systems, but had no effective response to simple physical force. Reality manipulation fields flickered as they attempted to process the chaotic assault. The machines understood energy warfare but couldn't comprehend primitive determination. Captain Torres's mining vessels struck the command ship's generator arrays. The impacts created massive breaches in the alien hull, followed by secondary explosions from their explosive payloads. Reality manipulation fields collapsed across multiple sectors as the generators failed. This created openings for subsequent attack waves to penetrate deeper into the ship. Lieutenant Webb's fighters delivered their nuclear payloads into the breached sections. The detonations followed basic chemical and physical processes that the enemy technology couldn't negate. Radiation bursts and shockwaves damaged systems across the command vessel. The attacks prioritized disruption over destruction, creating cascading failures. Boarding teams encountered minimal resistance inside the damaged ship. Devourer internal defenses relied on technology that proved ineffective against projectile weapons and simple explosives. The teams planted shaped charges at critical junctions, further disrupting the ship's systems. Their progress was slow but methodical, with each secured section creating new advantages. Earth's dogged determination proved decisive where technology had failed. The command ship systems began failing under the sustained assault. Reality manipulation fields collapsed completely as generator arrays suffered critical damage. The coordinated attack had succeeded through brutal simplicity rather than sophisticated technology. The hive mind began showing signs of disruption as the command ship systems failed. Connected vessels lost their perfect coordination, becoming individual units rather than parts of a collective consciousness. This breakdown created opportunities for conventional forces to engage effectively. The seemingly invincible enemy now faced disorganization and internal conflict. The assault demonstrated that primitive methods could overcome advanced technology when applied with determination. Human forces had disabled the enemy command through methods the Council would never have considered. This victory came at high cost but proved that the Devourers could be defeated through aggressive simplicity. Human engineers captured damaged Devourer processors from disabled ships. Their analysis revealed the hive mind's critical vulnerability: absolute certainty. The machine intelligence operated with perfect coordination, but couldn't process doubt or conflicting information. This discovery led to a unique weapon concept, encoding human stubbornness into digital form. The quantum virus contained no sophisticated mathematics or advanced algorithms. Its programming mirrored human persistence patterns observed during combat situations. The code replicated aggressive determination rather than logical sequences, creating something the machine mind couldn't comprehend through normal processing. An insurgent plug was inserted through damaged network nodes. The virus spread through the Devourer command structure, targeting coordination protocols. It didn't attempt to destroy systems, but introduced conflicting data streams that disrupted decision-making processes. The network began experiencing coordination errors almost immediately. Devourer ships started showing erratic behavior within minutes of infection. Vessels that had operated with perfect synchronization began targeting each other. Friendly fire incidents spread through the fleet as the hive mind's certainty collapsed under conflicting information inputs. The machines couldn't resolve the internal contradictions. The machine mind attempted to quarantine the infection using standard protocols. Every containment effort caused wider spread as the virus adapted with human-like stubbornness. The programming resisted deletion attempts through aggressive persistence rather than technological superiority. This approach proved effective against systems designed for logical opponents. Internal conflict spread through the coordinated fleet like a digital disease. Ships that had operated as a single entity began functioning as individual units. The perfect harmony of the harvesting operation dissolved into chaotic, independent actions. This breakdown created vulnerabilities where none had existed before. Conventional weapons finally found their targets as the defensive coordination failed. Council ships that had been ineffective against the unified fleet now scored direct hits on disorganized vessels. Energy weapons struck hulls that no longer benefited from coordinated reality manipulation fields. The technological advantage diminished with each passing moment. The hive mind couldn't process human persistence as a combat factor. Machine logic expected technological superiority or strategic brilliance, not stubborn refusal to accept defeat. This psychological blind spot proved more valuable than any weapon system. The virus exploited this fundamental misunderstanding of human nature. The chaos spread exponentially through the network. Each infected ship became a new source of corrupted data, overwhelming the central consciousness with conflicting information. The machine's perfect certainty became their greatest weakness against an enemy that embraced doubt and persistence as weapons. Surviving, Devourer vessels began shutting down, completely as the infection reached critical levels. Their systems entered protective shutdown modes that left them vulnerable to boarding and capture. The coordinated harvest that had consumed galaxies became disorganized chaos within hours. This digital manifestation of human determination proved more effective than any physical weapon. The virus didn't destroy systems but rendered them ineffective through psychological warfare. The enemy's greatest strength, perfect coordination, became the vector for their defeat. The quantum virus represented a complete paradigm shift in warfare against machine intelligence. Instead of competing technologically, human engineers had weaponized their species-defining characteristic. This approach would fundamentally change how the galaxy defended against future threats of this nature. The battlefield transformed from organized harvest to chaotic disarray, with formally coordinated ships now operating without direction or purpose. This breakdown created opportunities for conventional forces to achieve what superior technology could not. The final battle scattered wreckage across 5 star systems and claimed millions of lives among all participating species. Civilian casualties mounted as the fighting reached populated areas near the front lines. Evacuation efforts failed to protect non-combatants caught between military operations and the Devourer advance. Medical ships worked beyond capacity treating radiation burns and trauma injuries from unconventional weapons. Earth's coalition leadership accepted heavy losses as a necessary part of operational planning. Their strategy prioritized mission success over survival rates, with complete awareness of the human and alien lives being spent. This approach differed fundamentally from traditional galactic doctrine that minimized casualties even at tactical disadvantage. The calculation reflected a grim recognition of the extinction-level threat. The galaxy survived but carried deep scars from the confrontation. Infrastructure damage required centuries of reconstruction across multiple systems. Psychological impact studies showed persistent trauma among survivors who witnessed the harvesting operations. Economic recovery plans estimated decades of resource allocation to rebuild what the Devourers had consumed. Moral ambiguities persisted long after the military victory was secured. Ethical debates continued about the methods used to achieve survival. Some council species questioned whether the cost exceeded what was morally justifiable, despite recognizing the necessity. These discussions reflected fundamental differences in cultural values and philosophical traditions. The era of elegant warfare yielded completely to practical violence as the standard doctrine. Military academies discarded centuries of tactical teachings based on technological superiority. New training programs emphasized kinetic weapons and physical force over energy-based systems. This shift represented the most significant change in galactic combat philosophy since spacefaring began. The cost in lives and resources justified the means of survival when facing complete extinction. Historical analysis confirmed that no alternative strategy would have succeeded against the Devourer threat. The brutal efficiency of human methods proved to be the only effective counter to reality manipulation technology. This conclusion became part of official military doctrine across all species. Earth's contribution became the definitive turning point in the conflict. Their unconventional tactics and willingness to accept casualties created opportunities where conventional forces had failed. The coalition victory would have been impossible without human leadership and their unique approach to problem-solving. This recognition forced a reevaluation of humanity's place in galactic society. The galaxy now faced the difficult task of reconciling survival with the methods required to achieve it. Military planners incorporated human combat principles into standard operating procedures. Political leaders addressed public concerns about the ethical implications of the new defense strategies. Cultural exchange programs helped bridge understanding gaps between species with different combat philosophies. Victory required accepting violence as a primary tool rather than a last resort. This fundamental shift in thinking affected all aspects of galactic society, from education to diplomacy. The changes reflected the hard lessons learned from nearly facing extinction. Future defense planning would prioritize effectiveness over elegance in all tactical considerations. The aftermath saw increased cooperation between previously isolated species and civilizations. Shared trauma from the Devourer threat created new alliances and understanding. Reconstruction efforts brought engineers and workers from different backgrounds together on common projects. This cooperation helped heal some of the wounds left by the conflict. Galactic civilization emerged stronger, but fundamentally changed by the experience. The recognition that survival sometimes requires extreme measures became part of collective consciousness. This understanding would shape future responses to threats and influence diplomatic relations for generations. The victory established new standards for what civilizations must sometimes do to ensure their continued existence. The cost, measured in lives lost and worlds damaged, would never be forgotten. Memorials across the galaxy honored those who fell against an enemy that threatened all existence. These monuments served as permanent reminders of the price paid for survival and the difficult choices that victory required. The Galactic Council abandoned centuries of established warfare doctrine after witnessing Earth's brutal effectiveness against the Devourers. Traditional military leaders watched in disbelief as primitive tactics succeeded where advanced technology had failed completely. Their sophisticated energy weapons and shield systems proved useless against reality manipulation, while human kinetic strikes and physical impacts achieved actual results. This shift created significant tension within command structures. Officers who had spent careers mastering elegant combat strategies now faced the necessity of adopting crude but effective methods. The transition required accepting high casualty rates and collateral damage as operational parameters, rather than failures of planning. This represented a complete reversal of established military philosophy. Violence became reclassified from last resort to necessary tool in the new defense doctrine. Council strategists recognized that survival against existential threats required methods they had previously considered unacceptable. The elegant solutions that had defined galactic warfare for centuries had failed against an enemy that could negate technology at fundamental levels. Brute force and improvisation consistently outpaced advanced technology in actual combat situations. Mining ships converted into ram ships proved more effective than state-of-the-art warships. Chemical explosives delivered more reliable results than sophisticated energy weapons. This demonstrated that primitive methods could overcome technological superiority when applied with determination. Resilience now required fighting in ways the Council had previously considered uncivilized. Military training programs incorporated close-quarters combat and kinetic weapon proficiency. Starship design shifted toward reinforced hulls and physical durability over advanced shield technology. The new standard valued functionality and survivability over elegance and sophistication. Future invasion prevention demanded pragmatic readiness rather than technological superiority. Defense planning focused on practical countermeasures rather than theoretical advantages. Early warning systems prioritized detection of reality manipulation signatures over conventional threat assessment. Preparedness meant having tools that worked rather than weapons that looked impressive. The galaxy had to adapt to this new understanding of cosmic threats. Military academies revised their entire curriculum to incorporate Deathworld combat principles. Officers trained in elegant warfare strategies required retraining in practical violence and attrition-based tactics. This transition affected all levels of defense planning and implementation. Deathworld strategies became the only viable path for galactic security. The Council recognized that survival against similar threats required embracing what they had once feared. Human combat methods, once considered primitive and dangerous, now defined standard operating procedures for all defense forces. This transformation established a new imperial realism in galactic defense philosophy. Military leaders accepted that survival sometimes required methods that violated previous ethical standards. The concept of acceptable losses became institutionalized in strategic planning. Defense priorities shifted from minimizing casualties to ensuring mission success. The changes affected ship design, weapons development, and tactical training across all species. Vessels now featured heavier armor and kinetic weapons as standard equipment. Boarding actions and close combat became core components of military education. The galaxy prepared for future threats by embracing rather than avoiding violence. This paradigm shift represented the most significant change in military doctrine since spacefaring began. The Council species recognized that their previous approach had left them vulnerable to existential threats. Earth's methods, while brutal, provided the only proven defense against enemies that could negate advanced technology. The new defense strategy prioritized effectiveness over elegance in every aspect. Weapon systems favored reliability over sophistication. Tactical planning emphasized simple, executable maneuvers over complex strategies. This approach ensured that future threats would be met with practical solutions rather than theoretical advantages. A new imperial realism now shaped galactic defense. acknowledging that survival required embracing uncomfortable truths about violence and conflict. The galaxy would never return to the elegant warfare doctrines that had nearly led to its extinction. The victory over the Devourers carried a transformative message that forced galactic civilization to confront difficult truths. Ethical boundaries established over centuries had been crossed to ensure collective survival. The methods used to defeat the enemy would have been unthinkable before the threat emerged. This represented a fundamental shift in how civilizations understood their place in the cosmos and what survival sometimes required. The galaxy learned that existence itself sometimes demands embracing what others fear. Human tactics that were once considered barbaric became the only effective defense against an enemy that consumed galaxies. Their willingness to accept casualties and employ brutal methods proved decisive, where elegant solutions failed completely. This recognition forced a re-evaluation of long-held ethical standards and military doctrines. Human ruthlessness demonstrated it could serve as the galaxy's ultimate defense against existential threats. Their Deathworld heritage provided the necessary perspective to counter enemies that operated outside conventional understanding. The willingness to use violence as a primary tool rather than last resort created opportunities where technology had failed. This approach succeeded because it operated on principles the enemy couldn't comprehend. Cosmic history suggests similar devouring threats may emerge periodically across the universe. The Devourers had consumed 1,000 galaxies before encountering humanity's unique approach. Their pattern indicated this was not an isolated incident, but part of a recurring cosmic phenomenon. Other civilizations might face similar existential threats, requiring equally extreme responses. This cycle of destruction and survival appears to be a fundamental aspect of cosmic existence. Advanced civilizations that prioritize ethical purity may be particularly vulnerable to such threats. The willingness to embrace necessary violence becomes a survival trait when facing enemies that operate beyond conventional morality. This understanding changes how civilizations prepare for unknown future dangers. Preparedness now means accepting uncomfortable truths about violence and its role in survival. Military doctrines must incorporate methods that would have been rejected as unacceptable before the Devourer threat. The concept of acceptable losses becomes part of strategic planning rather than something to be avoided at all costs. This shift represents a permanent change in how the galaxy approaches defense. The aftermath demands perpetual vigilance against similar threats that may emerge in the future. Early warning systems now scan for reality manipulation signatures and other unconventional attack patterns. Defense planning prioritizes practical effectiveness over technological elegance. The galaxy remains prepared to employ extreme measures should another existential threat appear. This new understanding creates a moral paradox where survival requires sometimes becoming what you fight against. The methods used to defeat the Devourers resembled their own ruthless efficiency in some respects. This similarity forces difficult questions about where to draw lines in defense of civilization. The answers remain unresolved, but necessary to consider. The galaxy moves forward with the knowledge that peace sometimes requires the capacity for extreme violence. Civilizations must maintain readiness to employ methods they would otherwise find unacceptable. This balance between ethical standards and survival necessities defines the new era of galactic security. The lesson learned from the Devourers will influence decisions for generations to come. Future threats will be met with the understanding that survival sometimes demands crossing previous boundaries. The galaxy will not hesitate to employ extreme measures when facing existential risks. This preparedness represents the lasting legacy of the Devourer conflict and humanity's controversial but necessary methods. The cost of survival has been permanently redefined. The Galactic Council formally adopted Earth's combat principles as the new standard for all defense forces. This decision reversed centuries of military doctrine that prioritized technological sophistication over practical effectiveness. Council species now had to adapt to human tactical thinking, which emphasized aggressive solutions and accepted high casualty rates as operational parameters. The transition created significant cultural and philosophical challenges across multiple civilizations. Cooperation between species now required acceptance of brutal pragmatism as a necessary component of survival. Joint military exercises incorporated boarding actions and close combat training that many found distasteful. Soldiers learned to use kinetic weapons and chemical explosives alongside their traditional energy-based systems. This integration represented a fundamental shift in how the galaxy approached conflict and defense. The quarantine of Earth was permanently lifted by unanimous council vote. This decision recognized humanity's crucial role in defeating the Devourers and their essential contribution to galactic security. Human representatives received full diplomatic status and permanent seats on the Defense Council. The reversal of centuries of isolation marked a new era of cooperation between Earth and other spacefaring civilizations. Human engineers assumed leadership roles in galactic defense planning. Their designs prioritized functionality and durability over elegance and sophistication. New warships featured heavier armor and kinetic weapons as standard equipment. Defense installations incorporated physical barriers and redundancy systems, rather than relying solely on energy shields. This approach ensured practical effectiveness against unknown future threats. Military training programs across the galaxy incorporated Deathworld mentality into their curriculum. Soldiers learned resilience and adaptability through simulated extreme environments. Training emphasized the willingness to employ unconventional tactics and accept necessary losses. This preparation focused on developing the mental toughness required for survival against existential threats. The galaxy underwent significant transformation under human influence. Violence became systematized rather than exceptional in defense planning. Aggressive tactics and brutal combat methods became standard operating procedure. This shift represented the most significant change in military doctrine since spacefaring civilizations began cooperating. A new era of galactic security began with Earth's methods at its core. Defense strategies prioritized proactive measures over reactive responses. Early warning systems scanned for unconventional threat signatures. Military readiness meant having practical solutions rather than theoretical advantages. This approach ensured the galaxy would never again be caught unprepared. Human-designed weapon systems became standard across all defense forces. Kinetic projectile launchers supplemented energy weapons on warships. Boarding craft and close combat equipment received priority in military budgets. These changes reflected the lessons learned from the Devourer conflict about what actually worked in combat. The integration of Earth's combat principles created a more resilient galactic defense network. Multiple redundant systems ensured continued operation even when advanced technology failed. Practical solutions replaced elegant theories and emergency response protocols. This pragmatic approach provided security against threats that operated outside conventional understanding. Military academies revised their entire educational structure to incorporate human tactical thinking. Officers trained in both traditional warfare and Deathworld combat methods. Strategic planning emphasized flexibility and adaptation over rigid doctrine. This comprehensive approach prepared the next generation of leaders for unknown challenges. The galaxy's transformation under human influence established a new standard for cosmic survival. Violence became an accepted tool rather than a last resort. Preparation meant embracing uncomfortable methods that ensured continued existence. This paradigm shift would define galactic security for generations to come. Analysis of Devourer technology revealed their history stretched across cosmic timescales. The machines had operated for millennia, consuming 1,000 galaxies with mathematical precision. Their harvesting pattern showed no variation or error, indicating a process perfected over countless civilizations. This systematic approach eliminated any possibility of resistance or survival for the species they encountered. Biological matter served as the primary fuel for their endless expansion. The conversion of living beings into energy followed precise mechanical processes that left no waste or residual signatures. This efficient resource utilization allowed continuous operation across galactic distances without requiring external support systems. Their expansion continued unabated until encountering humanity's unique approach. No civilization before Earth had successfully countered their methods. The Devourer's reality manipulation technology evolved over millennia, creating defenses that negated conventional weapons and strategies. Advanced species relied on technological sophistication that proved useless against enemies who could rewrite physical laws. This technological gap ensured the Devourers' dominance across cosmic history. Humanity broke this billion-year pattern of galactic consumption. Earth's Deathworld heritage provided the necessary perspective to develop unconventional countermeasures. Their willingness to embrace brutal tactics and accept high casualties created opportunities where elegance had failed. This approach succeeded because it operated on principles the enemy couldn't comprehend or effectively counter. Earth's uniqueness proved to be the critical variable in defeating the Devourers. Their violent evolutionary history created problem-solving methods that differed fundamentally from other spacefaring species. While advanced civilizations sought technological solutions, humans employed physical force and persistence. This distinction made the difference between extinction and survival for the galaxy. The Devourers' long history suggests other Deathworlds might exist in the universe. Their pattern of consumption across 1,000 galaxies indicates numerous civilizations must have developed survival strategies. Some may have employed methods similar to humanity's approach, though none previously succeeded against the machine's technological superiority. Reality manipulation technology represented the culmination of millennia of evolution. The Devourers refined their systems through countless encounters with advanced species. Each harvested civilization potentially contributed to improving their capabilities. This continuous development created an enemy that seemed invincible through conventional means. The mathematical precision of their harvesting operations demonstrated perfect coordination across cosmic distances. Their hive mind operated with absolute certainty and efficiency, eliminating any possibility of error or hesitation. This perfection became their weakness when facing humanity's unpredictable and persistent tactics. Humanity's victory represents a fundamental shift in cosmic power dynamics. The Devourers' unchallenged expansion across 1,000 galaxies ended because of a species they would have considered primitive. This outcome suggests that technological sophistication alone doesn't guarantee survival against existential threats. The discovery of other potential Deathworlds opens new possibilities for galactic exploration and defense. Future encounters might reveal species that developed different survival strategies against extreme environments. These civilizations could become valuable allies against similar existential threats. The Devourers' history serves as a warning about the nature of cosmic existence. Their systematic consumption of galaxies indicates that extreme threats may emerge periodically across the universe. Preparedness requires understanding that survival sometimes demands unconventional methods and difficult choices. This knowledge transforms how the galaxy approaches future defense planning. The recognition that technological elegance can fail against certain threats changes strategic priorities. Practical effectiveness and adaptability become more valuable than theoretical superiority in confronting unknown dangers. Scientific analysis of Devourer technology revealed a terrifying truth about their capabilities. Their weapon systems operated on fundamental quantum levels that rewrote the very laws of physics, rather than merely manipulating energy. The green beams weren't destructive weapons, but reality editors that removed targets from existence entirely. The process involved precise energy manipulation at subatomic scales. Quantum field generators created localized alterations in spacetime that negated conventional matter and energy interactions. This technology didn't destroy targets but edited them out of reality, as if they had never existed in the first place. The effect bypassed all known defensive systems completely. Shield technology proved completely ineffective against reality alteration. Energy barriers designed to deflect weapons fire had no effect on beams that changed the fundamental properties of space itself. The Devourer's weapons operated on a level that conventional defenses couldn't comprehend or counter. This technological gap rendered centuries of defensive research obsolete. Only overwhelming physical processes could disrupt the reality manipulation effect. Chemical explosions and kinetic impacts followed basic physical laws that predated the Devourer's technology. Nuclear detonations created radiation patterns that interfered with precise quantum manipulations. Simple mass and velocity proved more effective than sophisticated energy weapons. Human engineers began reverse engineering these principles from captured Devourer components. Their analysis revealed the technology's limitations and vulnerabilities. Reality manipulation required precise control that couldn't maintain cohesion under extreme physical stress. This discovery formed the basis for developing effective countermeasures. Brutal simplicity consistently defeated sophisticated manipulation in combat situations. Ram ships with reinforced hulls caused physical damage where energy weapons failed. Kinetic projectiles followed fundamental laws of motion that reality editors struggled to negate. Nuclear explosions created chaotic energy patterns that disrupted delicate quantum systems. New defensive technologies emerged from this understanding of reality manipulation physics. Shield systems incorporated physical barriers alongside energy fields. Weapons platforms combined kinetic and energy weapons for maximum effectiveness. Defense planning prioritized redundancy and physical durability over technological elegance. The research revealed that reality manipulation operated through quantum entanglement networks. These systems could be disrupted by introducing random physical variables into their controlled environments. Simple explosions and impacts created enough chaos to overload the precise calculations required for reality editing. This understanding transformed galactic defense philosophy completely. Military doctrine now emphasized combining technological sophistication with physical force. Ships featured both advanced systems and primitive but reliable weapons. This hybrid approach ensured protection against both conventional and reality-based threats. The physics breakthrough demonstrated that advanced technology had inherent limitations. Some threats required solutions based on fundamental physical principles rather than complex systems. This recognition would influence all future technological development and military planning across the galaxy. Humanity's pragmatic approach proved crucial in developing effective countermeasures. Their willingness to combine primitive methods with advanced analysis created the first successful defenses against reality manipulation. This collaboration between different technological perspectives would define future galactic security strategies. Galactic psychologists analyzed the devourer collective consciousness captured from disabled systems. Their findings revealed the hive mind operated with absolute certainty and perfect coordination across all vessels. This unity had allowed them to consume 1,000 galaxies without encountering effective resistance. Their decision-making process showed no hesitation or doubt, only precise execution of harvesting protocols. The machine's psychological structure contained a critical vulnerability beneath this perfection. Their absolute certainty became a weakness when confronted with unpredictable human persistence. The quantum virus introduced doubt into a system that had never experienced uncertainty. This simple psychological weapon proved more effective than any technological countermeasure. Human stubbornness manifested as digital persistence within the devourer network. The virus replicated patterns of human determination rather than employing sophisticated algorithms. It refused deletion attempts and spread through the system like a persistent intruder. This behavior pattern differed fundamentally from anything the hive mind had encountered before. Once doubt entered the system, the hive mind could not function effectively. The machine's perfect coordination required absolute certainty in all decision-making processes. The introduction of conflicting data streams created internal contradictions they couldn't resolve. This disruption spread through their networked consciousness like a digital disease. Internal conflict began appearing across the devourer fleet. Ships that had operated with perfect synchronization started targeting each other. Coordination errors multiplied as the hive mind struggled with unfamiliar uncertainty. The system designed for absolute control began experiencing chaotic breakdowns. The quantum virus exploited this psychological vulnerability by mimicking human stubbornness. It didn't attempt to outsmart the system but simply refused to be eliminated. This persistence created continuous low-level disruptions that accumulated over time. The perfect machine logic couldn't comprehend or counter such primitive determination. Perfection contained the seeds of its own destruction within the hive mind structure. The absolute certainty required for coordination became a liability when faced with doubt. The system had no redundancy or flexibility to handle internal conflict. This rigidity made complete collapse inevitable once the process began. Imperfect human determination defeated perfect machine logic through psychological warfare. The virus didn't target technological systems but attacked the underlying consciousness. Human persistence created problems that technological sophistication couldn't solve. This approach succeeded where advanced weapons had failed completely. The hive mind's collapse revealed a universal weakness in collective consciousness systems. Absolute coordination requires absolute certainty, which becomes vulnerable to doubt. Any system operating with perfect synchronization risks complete breakdown when faced with persistent disruption. This principle applies across different types of collective intelligence. The Devourer's defeat demonstrated that technological superiority has psychological limitations. Advanced systems can be vulnerable to simple but persistent attacks on their operational principles. Human stubbornness proved more valuable than sophisticated weapons against the hive mind. This lesson would influence future defense strategies against collective threats. This revelation transformed understanding of how to combat machine intelligence. Psychological warfare could be more effective than technological competition against certain enemies. The approach required understanding the enemy's mental weaknesses rather than their technical capabilities. This represented a fundamental shift in combat philosophy. The quantum virus's success established new parameters for future conflicts. Defense planning would now include psychological analysis alongside technological assessment. Understanding an enemy's mental framework became as important as understanding their weapon systems. This comprehensive approach would define galactic security for generations. The Galactic Council underwent fundamental structural changes as a diplomatic body transformed into a pragmatic defense organization. Traditional diplomatic approaches proved inadequate against enemies that consumed entire worlds. This transformation required complete reorganization of leadership and strategic priorities across all member species. The council chambers now hosted military commanders alongside diplomats, shifting the balance of power toward those with combat experience. Military leadership gained permanent seats on the council. With combat veterans like Admiral Nera receiving positions of authority, their battlefield experience against the Devourers provided crucial insight into practical defense requirements. This shift reflected the new priority of survival over diplomacy when facing existential threats. Council sessions now focused on tactical readiness rather than political negotiation. Earth representatives secured key strategic positions within the reformed council structure. Their expertise in Deathworld combat tactics became essential for galactic defense planning. Human engineers led weapons development programs, while military advisors shaped training doctrines. This integration reversed centuries of quarantine and isolation, recognizing humanity's crucial role in defeating the Devourers. Preparedness replaced prevention as the primary doctrine guiding council decisions. Defense planning shifted from avoiding conflict to ensuring survival through any means necessary. This change acknowledged that some threats couldn't be prevented, only confronted with overwhelming force. The new approach prioritized practical effectiveness over theoretical superiority. The concept of acceptable losses became institutionalized across all defense forces. Military planners now calculated casualty estimates as standard operational parameters. This grim arithmetic reflected the harsh reality of confronting existential threats. Survival sometimes required sacrificing forces to achieve strategic objectives against overwhelming enemies. The galaxy prepared systematically for the next devouring threat that might emerge from deep space. Early warning networks expanded to detect reality manipulation signatures at extreme ranges. Defense fleets trained for brutal close-quarters combat, rather than elegant long-range engagements. This preparation acknowledged that future threats might require similarly extreme responses. Civilizational survival now outweighed ethical purity and defense considerations. The Council accepted that protecting galactic civilization might require methods previously considered unacceptable. This pragmatic approach recognized that absolute morality could become a liability when facing absolute threats. The priority shifted to ensuring continued existence rather than maintaining philosophical consistency. A new, harder galaxy emerged from the Devourer conflict, fundamentally changed by the experience. Species that once prioritized technological elegance now embraced practical violence as necessary for survival. Military doctrines incorporated brutal tactics that would have been rejected before the threat emerged. This transformation affected all aspects of galactic society and defense planning. The Council's operational structure mirrored this new reality, with command centers designed for rapid military response rather than prolonged debate. Decision-making processes streamlined to allow immediate action when threats were detected. This efficiency reflected the understanding that hesitation could mean extinction against certain enemies. Defense budgets shifted from advanced research to practical weapons production. Shipyards constructed vessels with reinforced hulls and kinetic weapons as standard equipment. Training facilities emphasized physical combat and survival skills over technological proficiency. These changes ensured readiness for conflicts that might defy conventional understanding. The transformation established a new era of galactic security based on pragmatic survival. Rather than idealistic prevention, the Council now operated with the understanding that cosmic threats required cosmic responses. This hardened approach would define interstellar relations and defense strategies for generations to come, ensuring that never again would the galaxy be caught unprepared against existential threats. The galaxy learned survival sometimes demands becoming what others fear to comprehend. Earth's brutal pragmatism now stands guard against cosmic extinction, a permanent bulwark forged in desperate combat. This victory required discarding centuries of diplomatic tradition for ruthless efficiency. The Devourer War proved that elegance fails where determination prevails against absolute threats. Our new reality accepts controlled aggression as essential for continued existence. Every defense system, every tactical doctrine, carries this hard-won understanding forward. We remain vigilant, prepared to employ whatever methods necessary. The silence of consumed galaxies will not be repeated. Nothing like this will ever happen again.